It's been the most insane week ever in Dungeons & Dragons history, and it just got worse. I'm gonna be real with you people, I did not have this on 2024's bingo card, but here we are. It's the year that just keeps on giving. So here's how the biggest D&D news of the year just went down and why it's absolutely terrible for Dungeons & Dragons. But before we get into it properly, let's all just take a breath and acknowledge how much we all love the tabletop role-playing game hobby, because there is a physicality to role-playing games, of getting miniatures on the table and enjoying some evocative, awesome terrain. Like, say, I don't know, how about recreating the Seat of the Nine Undying Ringwraiths, the Black Tower of Minas Morgul? That'd be kinda neat, right? Well, that's exactly what I did this month, thanks to today's sponsor, Bamboo Labs. And this flawless nightmare creation literally took me less than a week to create using the Bamboo Labs A1 3D printer, which is the perfect printer to start your journey with 3D printing. And that's not only because it's super affordable or that it's the best quality 3D printer that I've ever used, but because it is genuinely one of the easiest products ever invented by man. This thing is genuinely plug and play. Seriously, it arrived in a big box, I just plugged it in, and within minutes, I was ready to go. Even better, to actually print with it, I just downloaded the files I wanted to print and then used their program, Bamboo Handy, to automate everything. And within minutes, I was printing out an entire dungeon worth of terrain for my weekend game of Dungeons & Dragons. And that's how I got Minas Morgul without even having to accept a dark gift. I simply pressed print. Take that, Sauron! You can use this to print out terrain so that your RPG table looks amazing at a fraction of the cost. I've used mine to print out giant castles, dungeon floor plans for dungeon crawls, and even miniatures too. I've been printing out player characters with this thing. With a 3D printer, you could genuinely print any miniatures you want efficiently and affordably. Not to mention, you can even get these printed out in multicolor so you don't have to paint them after you're done. I mean, look at this. I literally printed this hot off the line. There's no paint on this bad boy. How cool is this? And if you've ever been tempted, well, you should be. And now is the time to buy one, because Bamboo Labs are currently having their biggest sale of the year with incredibly deep discounts. So check out my link in the description of this video for the Bamboo A1 3D printer combo. That's the printer, and it comes with everything you need, including materials to get printing immediately, and it even includes multicolored printing. So check out my link below. I can wholeheartedly recommend Bamboo Labs, and thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so let's get into it. Gary Gygax. Yep, we're starting there. If you've ever even gotten a whiff of someone carefully trying to min-max out a character sheet, or ever heard anybody desperately justify why their lawful good paladin is perfectly fine with recreational murder, or even just had someone smell your hair at a gaming convention, then you have heard of Gary Gygax. Like the dungeons he designed, he's pretty much inescapable. And Gary Gygax is a titan of the RPG hobby. Him, alongside Dave Arneson and others, are the co-creators of Dungeons & Dragons. And I think it's fair to say that collectively, they got this whole TTRPG thing really rolling. I mean, sure, people were putting on pickle hobs and screaming about the Kaiser and games of Kriegspiel long before Gary and Dave showed up. But in many cases, I've been assured those guys weren't pretending. It's just what my character would do. I think it's fair to say that without Gary and Dave, thousands of people would never have known the forbidden thrill, the silky pleasure that can only come from pretending to be an elf lord. And to me, this legacy of Gary and Dave as the second largest contributor to elf larpdom is pretty well assured. The first contributor, of course, being that scene in Lord of the Rings where Legolas skids down a staircase on a shield and nails like 4 orcs with arrows and then slams that shield into the throat of an Uruk-hai at the bottom. Hell yeah! That scene spawned a hell of a lot of Lego lads. Recently, however, Gary Gygax's legacy was brought into question, as this week there were major allegations made that Wizards of the Coast and their parent company Hasbro have been trying to cover up Gary Gygax's involvement in the creation of Dungeons & Dragons, and also slandering and trashing him. And then these allegations were supported and amplified by none other other than Elon Musk, who you'll probably know as the ex-husband of singer-songwriter and pop sensation Grimes. In a tweet that has now resounded around the RPG world, Musk publicly called for Wizards of the Coast to burn in hell for supposedly trashing Gary Gygax. And this claim has now been seized upon by members of the RPG community, and war has come to Dungeons and Dragons. And this is just the beginning. So what the hell is going on? Well, to explain that, we're gonna have to first jump to June of this year, when Hasbro, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of D&D, released the book, The Making of Original Dungeons and Dragons by John Peterson, a Dungeons and Dragons historian, which, okay, didn't know that that was a job that was possible. I'm very jealous now. Would have studied a little bit harder at school. This book was generally well received in the hobby community at release. The main criticism that I heard at the time was that the book binding was pretty poor, because presumably, like all of Hasbro books, they were printed on the cheap. Snippets of this book, however, were recently published on Twitter by Grums, aka Mike Kern, aka popular conservative Twitter pundit. I thought YouTuber was a made-up job. He claimed that Gygax and others are currently being erased and slandered by Wizards of the Coast. And to support this claim, he posted up pictures from the making of OD&D book, specifically these two paragraphs. Now, these paragraphs broadly make the claim that language in the original Dungeons and Dragons text could be insensitive and derogatory to certain groups, that the OG books were consciously misogynistic at times, and that slavery was mentioned in Dungeons & Dragons originally as a commercial transaction and was never contextualized as a human tragedy that devastated generations. And finally, the cultural appropriation occurred in the books as well, with the explicit example being given of how Hindu deities were given stats in those books so that players could interact with them mechanically. Now, Elon Musk's first involvement in this story occurs here, which was when he responded to this tweet saying, quote, "Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets to trash Gary Gygax and the geniuses who created Dungeons and Dragons. What the fuck is wrong with Hasbro and WotC? May they burn in hell." Okay, this escalated quickly. This tweet then went viral, but it was really just the beginning of something even bigger, because I hope you all are ready to say goodbye to D&D and instead welcome in X and X. But before we jump into that, we first have to deal with the original question, the original claim that was made. Are Hasbro and WotC are they actually erasing and trashing the contributions of Gygax to Dungeons & Dragons? Well, the Dungeons & Dragons 2024 Player's Handbook is introduced by Jeremy Crawford, the lead designer of 5th edition D&D, with these words, quote, "This story began 50 years ago, and you're part of it. In the 1970s, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson created a game of make-believe that fused rules with storytelling. As a teenager, I met both Gary and Dave. I even spent an entire day with Gary, and we did what all D&D fans do: share stories about our adventures in the D&D multiverse. I invite you to embark on such adventures anew." Okay, not looking great for the claim of erasure here. That is literally the introduction to the book, and in fact, literally the very first page of the new Player's Handbook is a credits page, and on it says, quote, "Building on the original game created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, and then developed by many others over the past 50 years. Yeah. That claim kinda falling apart. If you want to see real creator erasure, take a look at the Warhammer 40k rulebook sometime. This won't only not say who created the first edition of Warhammer, it won't even tell you who wrote the goddamn current edition of Warhammer. It's just written by the Warhammer Design Studio. You won't get an introduction to shit in this thing. The writers could have all been buried alive for all I know. Now, that is proper erasure. Warhammer books don't even come with a credit page. Okay, set that to one side. Now, how about the claim raised by Elon that WotC are trashing Gary Gygax, especially in this official history of OD&D? Personally, I don't know about that. The official history of D&D does indeed reference some elements elements of Gygax's work that I think many people today would find objectionable. Whether or not that is appropriate for a book supposedly celebrating the 50th anniversary of D&D, I don't know, I leave that up to you. Personally, none of all this bothers me, and none of the stuff that's raised in the book bothers me either. But I have a folder of Epstein reaction pics on my computer. I don't think I'm a normal person. Don't be surveying me, leave me out of it. Like, for example, yeah, it doesn't bother me that Hindu gods were given stats. I don't care about that. But also, I'm not a Hindu, and I play Smite, and I'm in Rama, so, you know, maybe I'm not the best person to judge this. If I had my way, I would have preferred to have seen more gods get stats. In my opinion, if you're gonna do some blasphemy, go all in. Bring on Twink Jesus, you cowards. As for the misogyny claims, well, yeah, there's some suspect stuff in here. AD&D, for example, did have a city encounter harlot table where the DM could roll up some sex workers, and that doesn't bother me, but I do have to ask, where the hell are all the rent boys on here, huh? Where's my man whores? They're all women on this table, and until I get rent boys, I'm gonna deem this book offensive. But seriously, none of this stuff really bothers me that much, but on the other hand, I haven't really seen WotC trash them either, and it's important to remember that the paragraphs that were raised by Grums are like 2 paragraphs of clarification in a very large book filled to the brim with original letters written by Gygax and Dave Arneson, and that book even includes original copies of pages from the OG D&D book. There are hundreds and hundreds of pages in this thing. It's clear that John Peterson, the author, has a lot of reverence and respect for D&D. So I just don't understand the claim that Wizard of the Coast have trashed Gary Gygax. I don't see it. But that said, I do often see claims about Gary Gygax, specifically that he was sexist or even misogynist, and I think that this is what a lot of those critics are actually talking about here. And the claims that Gygax was sexist or misogynist are typically supported by a few quotes that are swimming around the internet. Like, for example, this one, where Gygax said he was a biological determinist and thought women don't play D&D because of their brain function.
Women, know your limits.
I think the last 10 years an explosion of popularity of RPGs amongst guys and girls have proven that one wrong. And yeah, okay, you got me. Gygax also did explicitly say that he is a sexist that one time. But he might have also been joking when he said that, which I'm sympathetic to, because holy shit, have you ever watched one of my videos? I sure hope that none of my jokes ever get taken out of context and presented without comment. And we need to bring back segregation as soon as possible, and I want you to quote me on that. And while those quotes do exist, on the other hand, there's also a lot of testimony out there that Gygax was lovely to talk to and that he wasn't hateful or malicious. I mean, TSR, after all, did have female employees in creative positions, no less. And people like Laurie McVitie have spoken out publicly to say that Gygax was a delight to work with. And then you get stuff like this, which, okay, turns out Gygax, complicated guy. So you can come to your own conclusions, but for me personally, I agree with Heidi Gygax, daughter of Gary Gygax, when she said this. Quote, I do not believe my father was racist or misogynistic. Was he sexist? Well, he was born in 1938 to a father born in the 1880s and a mother born in 1906. He was raised in a traditional Anglo-Saxon Protestant family with traditional biblical family values where the male was the head of the household. In my adult opinion, yes, this is sexist and doesn't hold up to our more enlightened standards today. Yet he was a loving father and husband who valued all his children and his wife. All 3 of his daughters played Dungeons and Dragons with him at some point. He wasn't perfect, but he was far from all the negative accusations that are resurfacing. So yeah, Gygax, he was a man of his time, and his contribution to the hobby should be acknowledged and respected. But he was a real person with a complicated history. Unfortunately, me just saying that is now gonna get me probably put on a list somewhere, because after this statement from Heidi resurfaced in response to Mike Kern and Elon Musk and other critics, she started getting attacked as well by people supposedly trying to stand up for the Gygax legacy. Like, yeah, attacking the Gygax family to protect the Gygax legacy? That's not exactly a great look. Unfortunately, it didn't even stop there, because then D&D YouTubers got involved and started getting attacked as well. This started when Mike Kern first posted up, quote, Why have no major D&D YouTubers covered this yet? Are they afraid? Well, give me some time, dude. We can't all shit out 36 tweets a minute. I do a video like every 2 weeks. I actually script these bad boys out, and I sure as shit ain't rushing out some slop just to appease you. When I make slop, I like to take my time with it. Get it all lovely and slurry. Let it ferment. You think these clickbait titles write themselves? But seriously though, there is a good reason that most RPG content creators just do not cover this type of news, or even cover topics that aren't directly related to gameplay of like D&D or any other RPG. And it's because making videos like these get you attacked really hard online, because it turns out when you have an opinion online on anything, people will disagree with you very strongly. But I'm used to people attacking me. I grew up in Northern Ireland at the tail end of the Troubles, and I used to own a chain wallet. Though if you do ever want to support independent and honest slop, then check out my Patreon, because I keep getting demonetized by YouTube for some reason. But this situation is a good example of why so many content creators just don't like to engage with this stuff, because now one person did, and things have escalated way too far. Y'all know Bob the World Builder, right? He's the hated sensationalist YouTuber who is always dealing in that nasty clickbait. Oh, wait, no, that's me. He's actually the extremely chill YouTuber who often covers gameplay topics and does fun experiments with potions. We have another word for that in Ireland: alcoholic. But he did produce a short unmonetized video covering this topic, and in it, he had the temerity to say this.
My whole thing is just about having fun in the game and wanting everyone to play it.
Goddamn monster. And that video has now earned him a spot on the list. Instantly, he was dragged through the mud and attacked relentlessly by commentators online. Videos were being produced attacking him, and he's been called everything from a Watsy shill to a In fact, Mike Curran himself took a few shots at Bob too. Now, anyone that has actually watched Bob's content knows that he advocates for different systems and is generally a pretty tolerant, cool guy. He doesn't shill for WotC, and he just likes RPGs and wants more people to play them. And still, that couldn't save him from being attacked. But this is a great example of how this entire topic is now spiraling into a bigger, more toxic and dangerous culture war. And frankly, it's dragging attention away from contemporary issues in the RPG hobby that really matter. And it's turning certain issues into partisan ones. And that's really bad, you guys. For example, the focus of Hasbro lately on digitizing D&D and then monetizing it egregiously shouldn't be partisan. That should concern us all. Mass layoffs should not be partisan. They should concern us all. Changes to make D&D less open, less customizable, less accessible, moving it away from our table and into a digital paywalled garden owned and operated by a single corporation where it can be closed off and new players locked away forever in a cash item store, that should not be partisan. That should concern everybody. And those are the problems that I'm focused on. So it's why a chill ran down my spine when I saw that Elon Musk has now publicly stated that he is interested in buying Hasbro, exactly like that one time that he accidentally bought Twitter. This is happening, people. He has made a statement of intent. All it takes is Chris Cox to tweet the words "sold" to the lumpy man in black pajamas, and it's over, people. Jobs are good and we're all fucked. And I'm really worried about that, because if Elon does buy Hasbro and D&D along with it, all those problems that I mentioned are gonna get worse. Elon loves AI and digital stores and subscriptions and robot butlers, and he'll monetize the shit out of D&D. You think he won't? You think Hasbro are bad? Elon will be far worse. Elon buying Hasbro would be terrible for Dungeons and Dragons. It really would. So let's hope that Chris Cox did not see that tweet, and let's just try and keep TTRPGs physical and on our table and between ourselves, not monetized with cash item stores or premium subscriptions, and certainly not run by AI robot butlers who are actually, I'm almost 100% certain, powered by a living human being with a PlayStation controller in another country. As for Gary Gygax, I don't think that anyone is going to agree about Gary's legacy at this stage. He's lionized by some and condemned by others, but ultimately history will be the judge. Besides, we all know that the most offensive thing Gary ever said hasn't even been mentioned yet. Quote, referring to the art of DMing, Gary Gygax told those assembled that a good referee rolls the dice only for the sound they make. He simply decides what happens. Okay? I take this entire video back. The man was a complete monster. Get rid of him. Cancel, please. But hey, at least RPGs today are better than ever. Let's just keep it that way. And remember, Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons aren't the entire hobby. RPGs are really big, y'all. There's more than just Dungeons and Dragons. For example, you should play my favorite role-playing game, Call of Cthulhu, because that game, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, was not inspired by a problematic person with outdated ideas symptomatic of his times. Wait, he called his cat what? And if you want to help support independent coverage of the RPG hobby, check out my Patreon at patreon.com/discoursminiatures, because I really do keep getting demonetized and I don't know why. Also, check out my link below to get the best 3D printer that I've ever used. Big thanks to my patrons, especially CryptoKev, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye-bye.